All right. Well, Cybele, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Arlena, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm so excited to talk to you. You and I are part of the She Recovers coaching community, and you and I have been doing lots of work together. Gosh, it's been a while since you went through the podcasting class that we had.
So much fun. I just want to thank you publicly for all the generous support that you've given me, and you're such an inspiration for me and many people. You're really generous
Oh,
with what you have.
you're
And
so sweet. Yes,
I
it's
appreciate
my
it.
pleasure, right? Those of us who sort of been to the edge and have
Mhm.
sort of survived, we do feel this impulse, this natural impulse to try to save people from their suffering. And so, and right back at you, sister. It's like I love all the work that you're doing. You've just been doing a ton of work and helping other people recover and come out of their suffering. So,
Yeah,
yay
it's been
us.
fun. Yeah, absolutely. I love collaborating. I love being inspired and hearing what other people are doing. And I'm definitely in the stage where I'm at with, everything I'm doing, that I'm having fun with it. It's like playful.
It is playful and you're doing so much good work. So you're launching a podcast, you're coaching, you're doing classes. So
Mhm.
lots and lots of stuff. As I've been doing lately, we're gonna start with the lightning round. You cheated. You already heard somebody else's.
Oh, definitely. I prepared.
Prepared.
That yeah, I want to be,
Not
taking
cheating.
good
I'm
care of
kidding.
myself, taking care of myself. That is
Yeah.
inner child work right there. Is
Oh, is it? Okay.
Big Cybele taking care of teenage Cybele in this situation.
Oh, okay. That is awesome because don't really, I've been sober for a long time and I don't know if I've actually already done inner child work, but I can't wait to hear about your perspective on that.
Yeah,
I
we'll get
suppose I've
into
done.
it.
Okay, we'll get into the inner child stuff, but let's do the lightning round questions. What was your favorite recovery book when you first got sober?
Yeah, I love that question because it brought me back to probably like 2010. I was at the grocery store, and I had my wine in my cart, and I remember looking, how they have all those magazines as you're
Yeah.
checking out. I don't even remember which magazine. It was like a Woman's Day or one of those. And there was a title of an article that said, "Mommy doesn't drink here anymore." And I grabbed it and hid it and bought it, read the article, and then threw it away. But that was really the beginning of planting the seed for me that was something I wanted to look at. And I remember in the magazine article, she said, "You have to tell one person." And I thought to
Ooh.
myself, no way. Not telling
Hard
anybody.
pass.
And so then I got sober in 2011, and I thought about her in that article, and I Googled "Mommy doesn't drink here anymore," and it was a book. And the magazine article was probably for because of the book. And her name's Rachel Brownell, and I ordered the book and read it. And that led me, I'm not even exactly sure, but somehow that led me to the online group. And it took me to the BFB, which is the Booze Free Brigade, which was a
Oh.
private Yahoo, I think it was Yahoo group. And then that led me
Yeah.
to a secret Facebook group. And that
Uh,
was kind of like the beginning for me of that's where I met Don Nickel. That's where
ah.
I met all the women that I still know today, who are in my gratitude group. And just, yeah, led me to She Recovers and all of that. So that's the book that I would say was like the most instrumental for me for planting the seed, is Mommy doesn't drink here anymore.
Mommy doesn't drink here anymore. That is amazing. Yeah, you mentioned Don Nickel, and she is the co-founder of She Recovers. And I think one of their Facebook groups has a total of like 300,000 women on it. I mean, it was
Yes,
big,
the business page
the business
has at
page.
least 300,000. And then their She Recovers Together private Facebook group is over 8,000 right now.
Yeah.
It really blew up with the pandemic, of women,
Yeah.
who were looking for support or trying to get sober during quarantine.
Yeah. And we both facilitate meetings now. I can say
Right.
that after you helped me, she coached me. And it was so funny because when I did my first group, there were a couple of women who had actually been listening to the podcast for a couple of years.
That's
And it
so
was so
cool.
sweet. My husband was
Yeah,
like, oh my God,
they knew you. They were probably super excited to meet you. And yeah, that's such a great opportunity. We're volunteer hosts
volunteer
because it
host.
is a nonprofit now.
Mhm.
And that it's a beautiful way to kind of, you know, connect with
Connect.
women. Yeah.
Yeah, they say that alcoholism is a disease of isolation and connection is the cure, right?
I
So,
love that. I love that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a lot of resources right there. Look at us. So we got a a book, Boost Free Brigade group, She Recovers page and group. So awesome. I love tons of resources. Do you have a regular self-care practice? Is it like daily, weekly? How do you address your self-care?
Yeah, I love that question too. I'm going to say that for everyone. I love all your questions, but I love that question too, because I really thought about it. And I would say everything down to breath. Probably breath
Mm,
is the one that I use the most. And so that's just like pausing, mindfulness, take a deep breath in, hold it, exhale. I do throughout the day. So that would be, I would say, like the easiest and most simple one,
yeah,
all the way to, weekend long retreats that have been a way that personally I up level my recovery is by connecting with women in weekend or week long retreats. So I've done several of those, and then everything in between is I do go to meetings, to gatherings. I'm part of, like I said before, I'm actually in 2 gratitude groups.
nice.
I love podcasts. So all of those are part of my self-care in the way that it helps me stay connected, getting out into
Awesome.
nature, meditation, good sleep, nutrition, and just
Yeah,
pausing, like the whole self-regulation thing. I feel like, once you let go of the alcohol, you have to figure out a way to self-regulate. So my self-care is about self-regulation.
I love that.
Yeah.
So do you in the morning, do you have like a little routine that you do? Like mine is prayer, meditation, and journaling.
Yeah, I mean, mine is usually coffee.
I should have said that too. Coffee. First thing, coffee. But first, coffee.
Yeah, coffee. And then absolutely like the, beautiful music. I actually have the privilege of looking out at the ocean. I live in
Oh,
Miami, Florida.
so
And so
jealous.
I look out and look at the color of the
Mm.
ocean, any form of stretching or movement, anytime I get outside. So yeah, I mean, and just connecting. I try to do my gratitude. I don't always, but I try to do it in the mornings and
What a
just
difference.
connecting with others.
What a difference it makes to do it in the morning, right? Kind of sets the tone for the whole day. Days that I
Yeah.
miss it, I totally feel it.
That I was just going to say that when I don't, then, I love this idea of like, you can start your day over at any
Yeah.
time. You've heard that. And I do notice it. If I haven't really been if I've spent too much time scrolling, too much time online, then I think, okay, I really need to take a break right now and
Yeah.
do some me time and reconnect.
Yeah, something about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, I just need to like replenish in some way. I love the breathing, the breath work stuff that you do. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Awesome. And what's one thing you wish you knew when you first got sober?
I think that has to be the shame component. Like I wish
Mm,
when I first got sober, I was so ashamed. And so a lot of my stories about hiding when I drank and then hiding when I got into recovery. And I think like if I could go back to my younger 47-year-old self, I would say, you're going to be okay. And you can let go of
mm,
the shame. This is not your fault. And you're beautiful and I love you. But there's so much shame. And I think,
yeah,
like that's kind of attached to what we were talking about, the anonymity. Like for me, anonymity had less to do with a tradition and more to do with my shame. And so I
right.
think that that's kind of the part that I if I could go back to my younger self, I would hug her and say, you don't have to be ashamed.
I love that. Yeah. I wrote down, you're okay. It's not your fault. Right. All these things that maybe we did that we're not so proud of were things that we did. Listen, I just believe that everybody is doing the best that they can. And
I
with what they
definitely
have.
believe that. And I know that today.
Yeah. I did not know that in the beginning.
Yeah.
And you and I talked a little bit about anonymity before we started recording, and we'll definitely dig into that because that's something I also had to wrestle with as well. Especially launching a podcast. That was about 4.5 years ago. It's you definitely have to come to grips with that.
Yeah.
What do you do for fun these days?
So fun for me would be a bike ride with my adult children and a Friday night kind of mini dance party, cooking together with my husband. Those like just hanging out with my family and something really simple like a bike ride. I love bike riding.
Yeah. Cooking. Will your husband actually dance the cooking dance party? I was like, ooh, that
My
sounds like
husband's
fun.
from Spain, so he's
Oh,
he actually does most of the cooking. He loves to cook. It's his love language, and
wow.
he cooks for me every day.
That is so nice.
It's awesome.
My husband does the majority of the cooking too. Although I will confess that I am loving YouTube. I learned how to make sushi this weekend.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, it was super fun. So
Yeah, I
all of
love
the
cooking.
things.
I do love cooking
Do you?
too.
Yeah.
But right now he has more time than me, and
Ah,
our kids are grown. We have 3 children, and they're grown and they're gone. And he really loves cook. It relaxes him. And so we both
wow.
love cooking, but that's really his love language.
That is
So
that is so nice to have. My
yeah,
husband likes to cook. Awesome. Well, thank you for playing along with the lightning round. So typically what I do next is I would love to hear sort of your recovery story, a little bit about what your family was like and, maybe why you started drinking and then what happened that you decided that you wanted to stop, if that was indeed, I mean, at some point, I'm sure along the story, you decided you wanted to stop. So I would love to hear
yeah.
how your journey went.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. So let's see. I was born in New Jersey. I'm the oldest of 3 girls. We lived there until I was in 5th grade. And the big kind of traumatic event that happened was when I was in 2nd grade, my dad died. And he was young, he was 45 years old, and he died of heart failure. And I do have a half brother and half sister from my dad's first marriage. But when 1975, when I was in 5th grade, my mom said, "Hey girls, do you want to move to California?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go." She said there was this beautiful tunnel with a rainbow on it across the Golden Gate Bridge, and it sounded fun. And so we moved to California. And up until that point, I had been at a small school that had farm animals, and I had friends, and it was a very kind of sheltered, simple childhood in that sense. And when we moved to California, I went into a very big school and experienced bullying. So, I mean, now
Oh,
I can trace it back to the fact that my dad died and then the move and then the bullying. Like those are what would lift your ACE score, your adverse childhood experiences. And so I had one friend in 6th grade, and she moved away. And I had a really hard time for about 4 years. So sixth,
oh,
seventh, eighth, and ninth grade were pretty rough for me. And then in 10th, my mom could see that I was really struggling. And by 10th grade, she said, "We're going to switch schools and you're going to go into a different school." And on day one, I met a group of girlfriends, and we instantly all hit it off. And within a week or two, I had gone to my first keg party.
oh.
So I put, hand in hand, I was maybe 14 or 15 by then. I was a sophomore. For me, just hand in hand went popularity, friends, alcohol. And it wasn't like my first drink, like some people describe their very first drink as being so magical. I barely remember it, but I do remember feeling like drinking meant I could connect and have friends and all that. And so everyone that I kind of hung out with and knew drank the way I drank, and it was very normalized. I mean, this is the 80s in California. And I kept drinking through high school, college, went to Spain, met my husband, we met in a bar. And it was something I did not worry about. I'm not one of those people that got sober really young. I now can look back and think, I really liked alcohol, but I wouldn't say it was interfering with my life. And then we moved, my husband and I moved to California, then we moved to Miami. We had 3 children, and my drinking started to increase in my 40s. And by that time, I was homeschooling my 3 kids, and I was trying my hardest to be the perfect mom. That's really like my story, is around perfectionism, worrying about what other people thought, trying to do the best job ever, taking on too much, staying too busy, and not really having any other way to self-regulate except for wine. And that was my thing, was, my glass of wine at the end of the day, which, started to become more and more of a habit. Then it became a daily habit until I was 47. And I would stop drinking when I wanted to lose weight. So that, for me, like not drinking meant calories and all of that stuff. And then I would get to a goal weight and I would just bring it back in. And I started to notice that every time I brought it back in, I would get right back to the amount that I was drinking before. And in February of 2011, I decided to stop drinking, but I didn't have a problem, so I didn't need to get help. For me, it was like, you cut out chocolate, you cut out wine, you just do this. And it was that whole like self-will. And that didn't work. Because 4 months later, I didn't understand that I had been using alcohol to numb and regulate my feelings. So 4 months later, I picked it up again, and that took me very quickly to July of 2011, when I literally from one moment to the next, I was like, oh, I have a problem. So I wouldn't have like identified myself as having a problem. I just had a problem with managing it. I thought, if I can just keep all these fires burning, I can continue to do this thing. And luckily, for me, thank goodness, I woke up, I had a moment of clarity, and I realized I can't keep doing this. And so I reached out for help, and I stopped.
That's amazing. So you went to, did you go through the traditional 12? I think I already know the answer to this 12-step. We're not going to say which one.
Absolutely. I reached out to a family member, and she took me to my first 12-step meeting, which was wonderful. I remember it so well. And I got sober in Seattle. I was on vacation at my mom's, and it was wonderful. I remember it was a very packed room, and I walked in and I was like deer in the headlights. I had thought, Arlena, that I was totally alone in this. There was nobody like me. I was bad, and nobody else was as bad as I was. And I walked in and I was like, oh, all these people too. And I remember there was a little old lady like across from me, and she was knitting. And I thought, oh, she had a problem with alcohol too. And it just made me want to cry. Yeah. And then in that meeting, they have greeters in Seattle, and the greeter, when I arrived, he greeted me and we said hello. And as I was leaving, because they asked, is anybody on day one? And I said, I am. And when I was leaving, he said, just remember 2 things. love yourself, and no matter what, don't pick up the first drink, which I thought was just, of course I've heard it since, but it was so profound to me. And I was like, okay, I can do that. That's like a recipe card, do these two things. I can do that.
Two things I can do.
Right. And I thought to myself at the time, what does loving myself have to do with this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Right. I know. It's like, what does that have to do with this? Okay, sure.
Whatever.
And sure enough, 2 weeks later, I remember thinking to myself, oh, maybe just one drink. And I'm like, oh, no. That guy told me no matter what, don't pick up the first one. And that's kept me sober since.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Love yourself.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because a lot of the language and information doesn't seem to make sense at first, but after repeated exposure and some context, it all starts to make sense. We get a sense of what to apply where. And yeah, it's the simple truths. Love yourself and don't pick up the first drink. Those are, that's great. So you got a sponsor and did the whole thing?
I did.
How did you pick your sponsor?
Oh, she walked up to me.
Oh, isn't that nice?
She walked up to me. Well, so my story is that when I came back to Miami, I did drive-bys where I knew where the location was, but I was like too busy. And really what it was is I was so afraid of seeing somebody who I knew. I was so wrapped up in my own kind of reputation and the shame that we talked about. And so I actually didn't go to meetings for 4 months. And finally, I talked to another family member and I was like, yeah, I don't drink anymore. And she was like, how do you love the meetings? And I was like, well, I don't really do those. And she's like, well, that's kind of part of it. And so I was like, okay. And so she said, find a women's meeting. They will love you. Being a newcomer, they're just going to love you. And I said, okay. And so I knew where to go and I went, and then I just started going. And then right away, like I said, that person walked up to me and she was like, hey, do you need a temporary sponsor? And I said, yeah. And that was the beginning. And transformational is really, everything. The way I look at it is not very much changed on the outside. I don't want to say nothing, but really from the outside, probably nobody noticed. I had a lot of people tell me, I didn't even think you had a problem.
Isn't that
And
something?
yeah, and I think I hit it really, really well. And from the outside, you would say nothing's changed. Everything changed for me on the inside. I mean, I do not even, it's hard for me to even remember what it felt like to be me before 40, earlier.
Right.
And it's like, I feel like the way I like to describe it is I get to live in a parallel universe. Like I completely, right?
Yeah,
like
I
I
totally get
completely
that.
moved over to this whole other way of being where you connect and you have deep conversations like you and I are having right now.
Oh, for sure.
And it's just a different way of being, or looking inside for like when things bother you, looking at yourself and all the things that I was never interested in any of those, therapy or meditation or sitting quietly or ooh.
That's so funny. Yeah, so it sounds like you're just very high functioning, and I hear that a lot from people that are high functioning is that the outside opinions of people that are high functioning, it's like, oh, I don't think you have a problem. Did your husband ever tell you he was worried about your drinking?
Yes.
Oh,
So I wouldn't say I was high functioning. He definitely was like, hey, you got to pull yourself together. But we didn't really understand any of this, and my kids noticed. But really, that was about it. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I don't really know if other people noticed. I thought of myself as a party girl.
Yeah.
I was very, I loved anything frenetic and hyper and woohoo, like that was the way I was coping. It was keeping really busy and being kind of hyperactive. And now I can see I was self-medicating.
Yeah,
right.
for sure. Did you experience blackouts or like losing periods of time, or did you get fired from
In
jobs or DUIs or anything like that?
no DUIs. I mean, I was a stay-at-home mom, so
You didn't get fired from
I
your
didn't
day
fire
job?
myself. Yeah, I was full-time stay-at-home homeschooling mom. So no outer consequences, no DUIs, nothing like that. I would say towards the very end, that's another book that I love, by the way, is Blackout. I think
Oh,
it's Hapala.
you're the second person to recommend that
That's a really
today, in
good book.
fact.
Oh,
Okay.
really?
Yeah, isn't that funny?
I really enjoyed that book. And that's so
Okay.
interesting to me. I would say by the end, I had
But you
some,
didn't black out?
what I was going to say is
Oh,
by
sorry.
the end, yeah, by the end, I had some brownouts,
Ah,
definitely, where I would, by the very end, I was in
right.
conversations, and
Uh-huh.
then afterwards there'd be, chunks of time where I was not, remembering it all the next day. So
Okay.
it's
So
definitely
chunks
affected.
of time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Did
that's,
you?
oh yeah. Not even a
Well,
little
you got
bit.
sober young,
I
right?
did. I got sober when I was 25, but I started drinking probably when I was like 10. Not, I mean, I obviously didn't drink every day, but I started drinking super young and started blacking out almost immediately.
Oh, if you haven't read that book, then you'd be super interested, because she really gets into kind of the biology, because not everybody blacks out.
I know that's so crazy. I feel sorry for
Yeah.
people who have to remember everything. No, I remember feeling like, I remember when I first started drinking, like it was like junior high, like on the weekends with friends. And I remember thinking, um, like parts of the evening were like dreams. I was like, was that a dream or did that really happen?
Mm,
That kind of thing. But
mm.
I think the very first time I drank, I just remember like I did miss pieces of the evening. But yeah, that was crazy. I started way too young. But yeah, definitely at the end, I had like no recollection of like entire evenings.
Well, I mean, maybe that's what got you then into recovery
Yeah,
so young,
I crashed and
right?
burned early.
If you were blacking out almost from the get-go, I mean, you, like you said, from the very first time that you drank.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's your brain constitution, I think. I mean, that's kind of
yeah.
what that book is about. It's super interesting.
I'll check it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I also am aware, and you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but I am aware that you had some trauma in your past and that stuff that you've been addressing lately. Do you want to just share as much or as little about that as you
Yeah,
feel
sure.
comfortable with?
Yeah. And I just recently did the bubble hour interview, and I
Yeah,
talked about it on there. And just to say that I do have part of, my recovery is from sexual trauma. And that did happen in my childhood. Like I said, my dad died. And so this was with one of my mom's boyfriends.
yeah,
And the interesting thing about it is that, of course, I think maybe I was 9 or 10 at the time. You have nothing to compare it to, so you don't know. And I normalized it, and it kind of just got tucked away. And it
yeah,
wasn't something that I ever really even worried about or thought about. I mean, early on, and when I first got sober and told my story, it wasn't part of my story. And it wasn't until the Me Too movement that I revisited it, and I actually revisited it with my mom. And she and I were both talking about our Me Too stuff, and it kind of came forward then. And I took it to my therapist, and I was like, "Hey, what was that about?" And that was kind of the beginning of me really looking at it from a different angle. And so I I've done the work around it, and now I guess I'm talking about it publicly,
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, it's a very it's a difficult subject, but it's very common. I have
very
also
common.
had sexual trauma when I was growing up, and for me, it defined who I thought I was.
Mm,
Right. It happened to me really young, and it was a repeated thing, but it happened to me really young. It defined who I thought I was. It made me feel like I was a bad person. Did you also wrestle with those things, or you said you normalized it? So does that mean you didn't feel bad about it?
No, I felt like I dealt with it in the moment, and I don't know, but I don't feel like I felt bad about and I didn't actually even dislike the person because
Mm,
he remained in our lives. I mean, he was around us and he was a
wow.
nice person. And so now as an adult, I can say, um, I'm glad I was kind of feisty and I stood up for myself, and I'm glad that I did that. And yeah, I don't know the extent of it. I do know that there are certain things that I've stored in my body, and this is
Mhm.
where it's where the inner child stuff comes in,
Okay.
because if I can just tell you, like, how I even got interested in inner child work is really connected to this.
Tell me about what inner child work means to you. Maybe you can define it a little bit, and maybe share some practical.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I look at it is your inner child is really the part of your mind or brain that was formed in childhood. So it's like your emotions, your beliefs, your stories, the things that scare you, how you felt abandoned, that all formed in childhood, and how you are now interacting in the world in your adult body, um, based on those fears and beliefs and stories that you might not even be aware of. So it could be
Yeah.
subconscious, right?
Subconscious
So,
beliefs. Yeah.
for
Mhm.
example, one of mine is angry people scare me. So if I'm in a public place and someone's yelling, I will feel really tense and like become hyper alert. I'm very hyper vigilant.
Mm.
And now I understand that that's stuff from my childhood. And so things like that, like interacting with the world today with beliefs and fears that were started in childhood. That's kind of how I look at it. So really going back and doing inner child work is really reparenting
Mm.
that part of you that got scared.
Okay, I love that. Reparenting the part of you that got scared
Yeah.
or felt abandoned or
Right.
abused.
And the thing about doing it, the inner child work, is that it's hard to see things. Like sometimes we have this idea that like abandonment has to be this big traumatic thing, right?
Right.
But it might not be a big traumatic. Then some people say big T trauma, little T trauma. It
Right.
might be just something like being scared going into kindergarten, or being worried when your mom went out in the evening and put lipstick on. I remember my mom putting on perfume and feeling like, oh no, she's going to leave. Now that's not, a huge abandonment, but it's how I felt. So it's kind of like the ideas that were formed in childhood that you bring with you into adulthood.
Okay. Yeah, I like the differentiation between little T trauma and big T trauma because I feel like trauma is like on a scale, just like addiction is on a scale. It's like a
Mhm.
spectrum. I should say a spectrum where it's
Yeah,
sort
I
of
know what you
low
mean. Yeah.
grade and then it can be, did you feel abandonment like when your father passed away? Like obviously it wasn't his choice, but did you have to deal with feelings of abandonment from when your father died?
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly just grief, like so
Mm,
much sadness, like, oh, I didn't get to say goodbye. I don't get to see him again.
that's
And
traumatic.
then, yeah, absolutely. I have some great memories of my father. And, one day he was gone. He died of a heart attack. So it was sudden. And I was at the end of second grade, and um, it was a big loss. It was definitely a
Yeah.
big loss. I missed him. I still do. And I'm
Yeah.
57. I still do, because really, when you're a kid, you kind of just make do, and it was just part of our reality. And our dad died, that was part of
Yeah.
our reality. But then when I met my husband and on my wedding day, I was like, oh, I wish he were here. When I had my
Mm,
children, I was like, oh, I wish that they knew Grandpa Gerard. And I kind of kept him alive and for my kids by talking about him. But even the other day I was thinking, I really wish he was around, you know.
Yeah, he sounds like a cool guy.
Yeah, he was amazing.
Okay, so I want to transition a little bit to, so now, I mean, so you've been gotten public with some very intimate information, and thank you so much for sharing that, because, that is part of normalizing, things that happen to us. It's part of normalizing pain. And you and I had a discussion before about anonymity, because I was also got sober through 12-step programs, and anonymity is the foundation of the whole thing. And while I get the need for privacy and anonymity, because like you, I was scared to death that I would run into somebody I know. It didn't like dawn on me
Doesn't
that
make
if,
sense.
yeah, isn't that funny? That if they were there, they too were also struggling. So funny. Didn't quite connect the dots on that
Right,
one.
right. Yeah, if they're in the same room, it's for the same reason.
For
But
the same
sure.
reasons. But I did appreciate having that sort of shelter and protection of the anonymity. So I feel like there's a time and a place for it. But then again, in our broader society, it's still so shocking to me how stigmatized mental health issues are. Like people like, oh, don't. I told a lady not too long ago, we were talking about the coming out process of when you're in recovery or you don't drink or do drugs or whatever. It's like you pick and choose the timing of when you tell somebody and you share that information. I shared it with somebody recently and she gasped. She was all, oh, really? I thought that was so funny. Yeah, really. I was like, oh, not you. Yeah, bitch, me.
Yeah, I mean, we're in such a different space now because we're in a place where we celebrate recovery,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I mean, pretty much everyone I interact with is
I know.
sober. So it's so, it just feels like so normal to me now.
Mhm.
But it's absolutely, the truth is that it is stigmatized, and there is kind of shame still. I feel like it's wrapped in, and I really don't know why the anonymity, why that it was that way in the late 1930s and 40s. Um, I don't really know the history of it. And I do feel like for reasons for mental health, that there needs to be a coming out. There needs to be a lessening of the stigma. And it's going to only happen when we recover out loud. So,
So part of the history is that there were two things that spurred on the anonymity, from what I understand, is that the people who were, what's funny is people used to get sober through letters. Like they
I
would,
know, I've heard
yeah, isn't that
that.
wild?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
it's like people now who are getting sober on Zoom, to me, I'm like, that's a step up from how they used to do it in the beginning, right? Could you imagine
Hmm.
trying to process your feelings and you write it in a letter and you send it and you wait like maybe a couple weeks before you get a response? That's so nuts. But in the beginning, these people, there were so few of them that they had to be anonymous because they were inundated with requests for help. And there
Mm.
was like nothing out there, and there were just thousands, millions of people who were
Hmm.
struggling. And then the other thing is that they were also anonymous because they felt that it would limit their financial prospects. Like if it got
Hmm.
out that they were a quote unquote alcoholic, that they would not be employable.
Hmm.
And so those two things are outdated. You can totally get a job if you are, in recovery, and there are lots and lots of people available to help.
Hmm.
So I feel like we really need, as a community, we really need to revisit the whole idea of anonymity. Because I'm with you, we need to recover out loud. That's how the information gets out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think each person gets to do it in their own way, but it shouldn't be that we can't talk about it, or that if we do talk about it, we're so ashamed. And I think, like you said, like if you have to say anonymous because you're afraid you're not going to be able to get a job, or you'll be fired for your job. I think that there's still some of that around, that people feel like that we're worried about what other people think of us. And when I likened it to, if I had anything else, any other kind of disease, and I don't know about the disease model or how you feel about that, but if I had anything else and I was able to just let people know, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
So my daughter was a Girl Scout, and in the Girl Scout troop, I think everybody else, all the other women, were breast cancer survivors.
Oh, wow.
And pink ribbon all the way, and they talked about it openly. And I remember one time the topic of addiction came up, and someone said, oh, my brother-in-law, or my this type of thing. And I remember just staying quiet and feeling maybe mad at myself that I didn't say anything, but also feeling like, well, I didn't really have a place to say, and I thought to myself, where's my pink ribbon? I want to be able to say, like, this is my story. This is what happened to me. This is so common. And I think there's also a connection with the legal system, that,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
people being jailed versus getting actual help, the system with rehabs and all of that. So I think by talking about it, I think this is the hope. And I know that this is what She Recovers saying, when you're ready, recover out loud, so that more money is put into research, so that more conversations are happening, so that more people can be helped. And it's really across the board with all mental health.
Yeah. I'm so curious. In that Girl Scout meeting, when the lady was talking about her brother-in-law, I get it from like the family perspective, that they get really pissed because they don't understand the addiction component, where we lose the ability to choose. It's like, why can't he get sober for his wife? Why do they do all these terrible things? There's all this judgment associated with that. Was that the tone of the conversation that you were hearing? Is that why you didn't feel like you could say anything?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was it. It was definitely not coming from a place of compassion. It was coming from a place of, like, this person's choosing to behave that way. And you're absolutely right. When it's in the brain, it's behavioral, and it's harder for people to understand that, why people relapse or slip, or whatever you want to call it, and not understanding the behavioral part of that.
Yeah, addiction's brutal. It's about losing the ability to choose. I remember like waking up like some mornings just hating who I was because I couldn't stop, and I didn't recognize that I had lost the ability to choose whether I was going to drink or not. Did you have
Mhm.
those? I'm sure you had those mornings too, right?
Well, it's almost like being two different people in the
Right.
morning. In the morning, it's like, I
Separate
am
life.
not drinking today. Absolutely not. I'm taking a break. I'm going to do a 3-day cleanse. That's what I used to, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, I was a different person.
Yeah.
No, just one,
Mm.
just half a glass. Well, no big deal. It's so, look, people in Paris sit at cafes and drink wine. This is a sophisticated thing to do,
Wine is sophisticated.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost like being two different people, or having two different minds in the difference between, you know, how you feel in the morning, and then how you feel at 5, and then how you feel at 3 a.m. I
Ooh,
don't know about you, but I was hitting, I was 47, so I'm closer to menopause. And those 3 a.m. wake ups were brutal because there was so much anxiety, the heart
right.
racing. Um, in the beginning, that's what I used to say, is like, people would say, why aren't you drinking? I said, it gave me terrible insomnia, which wasn't true. Wasn't a lie. It was the
Kinda.
truth, but
Yeah.
it was just a partial truth. But yeah, the insomnia was terrible.
Yeah. Were you in early recovery? How quickly were you able to like start sleeping better and feeling better?
Yeah. I would say like the first week was hard, as far as like just the physical symptoms. And
Hmm.
then I started to feel good really quickly. But I
Yeah.
remember hearing someone saying the whole first year is early recovery and trust your
Yeah.
body. And that's
Yeah.
what I tell people, like, just trust your body. It knows what it's doing. Just,
Yeah.
drink your water, just
Take
chill
care of your body.
out, take
Yeah.
care of yourself. And it's such a wonderful way to be, right? And
It
yeah,
is.
and talking about self-care, the family member that encouraged me to go into my first meeting in Miami, she said, what's holding you back? And I said, I'm just so scared. And she's like, why are you afraid of taking care of yourself?
Ooh,
I
that's
love
good.
that. Yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. I thought of myself as bad. And
Right.
and then she was saying, you're just taking care of yourself. I was like,
Right.
oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Mhm.
So, they talk about, in the rooms, they talk about the obsession to use. It sounds like that left you very early. Is that a fair statement?
Yes,
That's a blessing.
absolutely. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Do you think you were just ready?
I don't know. I mean, that's definitely my story, is that I wasn't ready until I suddenly was ready. Mine was very sudden, and I suddenly could see it all, and I knew how I was hurting myself with
Mm,
alcohol. I could see it very clearly, and I knew I had to stop. And then for me, very quickly, it was that recoil from the flame feeling. I
right.
just
Yeah.
recoiled from it. I couldn't stand the smell. Oh my gosh, I hadn't thought about that in a while.
Mm.
Did you ever have heightened smell
Oh, in the beginning?
in the beginning?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's so funny, because I remember being in my car and the window was down, and the car next to me, the window was down, and I knew the person had alcohol. I could smell it from like, I was like, what's going on here? This is like a superpower. It's gone away now. I don't have it
Yeah.
anymore. But I had such a heightened sense of smell.
Yeah. I think it's sort of like a survival skill, right? So it's something that you
Mm.
grow dependent on. And then when you remove it, it's almost as if somewhere in your brain, your body is like trying to find it again. This is how I feel when I'm dieting. Like all of a sudden, food smells amazing. I can smell it a million miles away, it seems like. So maybe it's like your brain, like trying to find the thing that it thinks it needs.
Or the opposite, the thing that's dangerous.
Oh, yeah, could be like what to
Yeah.
stay away from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
You didn't have any, how did you have any reservations about like sharing your non-drinking status in the beginning?
I was terrified to tell anybody.
You had a family member you were able to tell, but that was it?
Oh, so yeah. So that family member had already stopped drinking, and so she was like a trusted person that I knew. It's so funny, because when she stopped drinking, I was not interested at all in sobriety. I was like, whip-de-doo, good for you.
Goody two
But
shoes.
somewhere in my mind, I knew where to go when it was my time. So
Mm,
there were those people. There was one friend and then two family members that I knew, that I could go to them at some level. I knew, and then I didn't think about it until I needed to, and
okay.
then it was like, oh, I know what to do. I need to go to them. And so my immediate, like, my birth family, my
Uh-huh.
mom and my sisters, they knew right away, because I got sober in my mom's house.
Right.
And then I let my husband know, and my kids were pretty young, but
How old
they
were
knew
they?
that they were 11, 13, and 15. And
Oh,
they
okay.
knew the first member. I described how I had stopped in February, and then I actually got sober in July, but I had stopped for 4 months in February. They knew that I had stopped then. And then so they knew.
Mhm.
They've watched, they know everything. They've
They
watched the
know.
whole, like, they're kids who were raised by someone who got recovery.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I know you do a lot of work now to help people get sober and feel better about themselves. Do you want to share some of the classes that you facilitate?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So I just to say, like, She Recovers is a really important organization for me. And a few years ago, I went to their big event in New York, and that's where they had a little table set up with the "Do you want to become a coach?" sign, and I beelined it over there, and then I've become a She Recovers coach. And my coaching business is called Wide Awake Recovery, because when one time in my early, like maybe within my first year of sobriety, I was running, it was raining, I had my headphones, earbuds in, I was listening to Katy Perry, Wide Awake, and I started to cry. I just, tears were coming out because I was so happy. I felt like the chains, of addiction, the chains had been taken off of me. I was free.
Yeah.
So that's how I decided to name my company Wide Awake Recovery, from that song. And so today, what I have, different things that I do are volunteer host for She Recovers, but I also offer one-on-one coaching with women who are either sober or sober curious, and they're interested in kind of the next steps. Maybe they've decided to stop drinking, but they really want to look at their emotional sobriety and their relationships with themselves, family members, and others. And I also do group coaching courses. And one course is called Brave Boundaries. And it's a 6-week course that the maximum number is 12 women. And so it's a small group. And we work through group coaching and a lot of journaling and interaction. We work through building braver boundaries and are doing boundary work. The other course that I'm teaching is Self-Love for Your Inner Child, which is a reparenting course for women. And the course I'll be launching in the fall is the Perfectionism Workshop.
Ooh, that one's going to be good.
Right? All stuff that I absolutely am interested in, love doing. So they're really fun for me to teach. And it's amazing to interact with women who are also kind of, are interested in personal development work.
Yeah, no, I think brave boundaries are so important. And I think especially those of us that have had any kind of sexual trauma or addiction, obviously, it's important to be able to really be in touch with ourselves to know where the boundaries are, right? For me, that was like the trickiest part was I didn't even know where they were in the beginning. I was so disconnected from myself. I couldn't communicate when I felt uncomfortable or what I needed or what I wanted or any of that. And then later it became more like boundaries with myself regarding, I got some of that perfectionism too, right? But like doing too much or approval through achievement, all that stuff that cost me my well-being, right? And so I think for women, even who have been sober for a while and you want to go deeper, courses like Brave Boundaries and the self-love for the inner child and perfection is so important, because once the addiction is sort of like, once you regain the choice of whether you're going to drink or not, hopefully not, then you want to go deeper. And because I think as human beings, we continue to evolve, right? We're always nobody's standing still. You're either evolving or devolving. So it's right. So it's better to evolve. And that's kind of the funny thing about boundaries too, is sometimes when you're doing all this personal growth work, your boundaries change, and sometimes you don't know where the boundary is until you cross it. That's also,
it's true. That's so true. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's so tightly linked, boundaries to resentments and codependency. And it's really about, a boundary is really about protecting your capacity to love others. That's something that my sister said. I'll give her credit for that. And I love that. And it's really because a boundary is not about setting up a wall or cutting people, like it could be that you don't talk to them anymore. But really, a boundary is about checking inside with what's coming up for you and meeting your own needs for safety, love, and belonging rather than kind of outsourcing them to other people.
Outsourcing that. Yes. Making somebody else responsible for my happiness. That was sort of my go-to before sobriety. Well, listen, Cybele, thank you so much for being so willing to share all this information. I think it'll be so helpful. And if people want to reach out to you and ask you questions about your classes, where's the best place for them to reach you?
Wide Awake Recovery is the website. And I'm on Instagram, Wide Awake Recovery, and I'm also on Facebook.
Yay. And of course, I will leave all the links to all the things, the books, the websites, and all the things. So
wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you. I love spending time with you in our monthly calls and just watching your growth. You're just doing such amazing work. I just adore you so much.
Thanks,
So
Arlena. I'm so grateful for this platform and connecting with you here. And yeah, I absolutely love connecting with you in those monthly masterminds because we're just we're just kind of supporting each other, and it's so much fun.
Care for the caregivers, right? Yeah.
Yay.
Listen, thanks so much, and we'll talk again real soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Have a great day. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.